All right, on our practice test for test number 1, question 53, we're looking at this graph of a function, and we need to find the domain, the range, the intervals where it's increasing, decreasing, and constant, and also find the f values at f of 0 and f of 4. Okay, so let's start with the domain. The domain is all those possible x values. So I start at the far left and I see how far left can I go, and there's kind of an assumed arrow here and here. So how far left can I go? I can go all the way, that arrow says it goes negative infinity forever, so it goes forever left, and then all of these x's are defined until we get to right here at x equal to 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can see that's 4. Everything's scaled to 1 because there's a 7 there. So that's at x equals 4. There's no, the graph's not defined because there's an open circle there. That means there's a hole in the domain. So that means it goes from negative infinity to 4, and then we don't include 4. But then it picks up and goes forever after 4. So it goes from negative infinity to infinity except excluding the number 4. So there's my interval notation for that. And then for B, whoops, wrong thing. For the range, that's all my possible y values. So I go as low as I can go and as high as I can go. And again, this arrow says it's going down forever and up forever. So it's going from negative infinity to infinity. So we just have to look to see if there's any holes. And there's no breaks in the graph except for this one, but even here, even though there's a break in the graph right there, there's no break in the y value, because even though there's a hole in the graph, I can go over here and find, well, y is still defined at y equal 2 because there is one y over y equal 2 value right there. So there's no breaks in the y values, so that goes from negative infinity to infinity. Now moving on to C. So where's the graph increasing? Where can my little guy walking on my graph be walking uphill? He's always walking left to right, and we always talk about it in x values. So he's walking uphill from negative infinity until he reaches the top of the hill. So we have negative infinity till the top of the hill is at x equals 0. And then he has to do some other stuff, so there's a break. But then he picks up right here at this broken, kind of does a leap over that hole, and then starts walking uphill again. And then he'll walk on forever. So he walks downhill till he gets to 4, does a skip over 4, so he leaves out 4, and walks uphill for the rest of his life for infinity. So there's our increasing interval. And then our decreasing interval, he'll be walking downhill when he gets to x equals 0 and all the way until he gets to x equals 4. So here he's walking downhill. So that's my decreasing section. So that is from x equal to 0 till x equals 4. And he's never walking flat, so there's no constant. Constant means that he'd be walking on a horizontal line or slope is 0, and that never happens on this graph, so I would say nowhere. All right, moving on to D. So I'm going to erase all this other stuff on my graph so I can see my graph clearer. Okay, so at D, I have to find f of 0. That means to find the y value that corresponds to the x value of 0. So when x equals 0, that's this line right here, then the graph is right here, which is at y equal 1, 2, 3, 4. And I check my scale to make sure it's counting by ones, which it is because I can see at the 7th tick mark is a 7. So that means that 4th tick mark is a 4. So my y value for that point is going to be a 4. So f of 0 equals 4. And F of 4 means I go to my graph and I go to plug in my x at 4. So I'm looking for what corresponds with x of 4. And I go to my x-axis and I go 1, 2, 3, 4. And looking at my graph, F is not defined there because there's a hole in the graph. So that means that this one is not defined. Right before 4 or right after 4, it's pretty close to 2, but exactly at 4, it's not defined. There is a hole at 4, too. So now to enter in all my answers. So this everything's done on the right. This is what is on my show my work paper that I'm going to submit. But now I got to enter it in the computer. So to my domain, it had 2 intervals. I'm looking at my blue text over here. So that had 2 open intervals. And let's see. Oops. Okay, so I want to go from negative infinity which of course didn't show up. So let me try that again. So we have negative infinity. Hopefully it showed up this time. There we go. And then a 4. And then picking up after 4. Ugh. My keyboard keeps getting lower and lower. That's annoying. Okay, let's see here. This works a lot better on the computer. I'm using my tablet because I want to be able to show my notes on the same screen, but on the computer this is much easier to type. And then from 4 to infinity, which I can type INF on the keyboard to get my infinity symbol. Okay, now my range goes from negative infinity to infinity. So that's a single open bracket interval. And I get negative infinity to infinity All right, and then my x intervals, my increasing intervals, it has 2 parts, both with open parentheses. So I choose this one. I'm putting that orange increasing domains now. All right, and then our decreasing, that's the red. So that has one interval with open parentheses. Okay, and there's not constant anywhere, so for that one I'm going to say nowhere. Good. And then for part D, I have f of 0 equals not defined, so just check that checkbox. Okay, and f of 4 is, oh, I got that backwards, I'm sorry. F of 0 is 4. Okay. Really, it is so much easier on the computer. It goes pretty quickly on the computer. The tablet is taking forever to load. All right, almost done, and then f of 4 is not defined. And hopefully this will check quickly. There we go. And then make sure everything's saved, no boxes are highlighted, and then I can submit my answer. And I see it's correct. On the practice test, I get immediate results and find if it's correct or not. If it's not correct, I can always click over here to see the correct answer. And I can also scroll down to see the solution. I just have to be a little bit patient, especially on the tablet. That solution is not right, actually. This is like the wrong question now. This is the last question. I think I must have accidentally hit a next button or something. There we go. This is the question we were looking at. Let's try that again. I must have accidentally hit that previous button. All right, there we go. And that's the solution that we found.